controlled trials are time and resources consuming. In despite of the high investment, many trials fail to produce a definitive answer due to a lack of feasibility. So it would be logical that we would want to start small. In a typical drug development process, researchers often start with early phase small trials and then decide whether or not they want to proceed to a larger phase 3, phase 4 trials. For non-drug intervention, or if the focus is more about the feasibility of the conducting the study, researchers often do what we call a pilot study or a feasibility study to inform the subsequent larger trial. Specifically, a pilot trial is just one type of the pilot study that mimics the design of the subsequent larger trial and utilizes a randomization process. So both phase 2 and pilot trials are small studies. There have been some researchers on the performance of how phase 2 trials inform the subsequent larger phase 3 trials. However, little attention has been drawn to pilot trials. This is a pity, considering that this kind of study has been conducted in practice for many years. And in recent years, the number of pilot trials published has been dramatically increasing. After a pilot trial has been conducted, researchers often need to decide whether or not they want to proceed to the full trial. And if we want to proceed, they may decide whether or not they want to make some changes on the trial design. This is a complex decision-making process because often if the researcher wants to modify the trial design, multiple aspects need to be changed. For example, they may want to broaden the age group range so that more patients can be eligible for enrollment. They may want to enroll patients with more severe disease, so they may observe a larger effect size, or they may use a placebo control in the pilot, but now they move on to the larger trial. They want to use an active control. So all of this can make a difference on the feasibility of the larger trial, as well as the potentially efficacy of the intervention, and the direction of the influence may be different. Therefore, under these circumstances, the decision-making process can be really complex. On the other hand, if the researchers decide just go with what they did in the pilot phase, it doesn't mean that the full trial will get exactly the same answer as the pilot trial, as there can be at least random errors moving around. So with that being said, the proposed thesis work wants to tackle with these two challenges by the following 3 aims. In aim 1, we want to assess whether a pilot trial improves the feasibility, quality, and outcome of the full trial by comparing full trials with a pilot trial to those full trials without a pilot trial. Secondly, we want to evaluate what qualities of pilot trials result in high quality, quote unquote, successful full trials by comparing the characteristics of the pilot trials and how that associated with the full trial. So basically just learn from the previous experience in research practice. And the third aim, we want to review currently available decision-making tools for researchers to use to progress from the pilot to the main trial, and hopefully propose a new tool to facilitate this decision-making. And now I want to end my presentation with a photo of my 8-month-old daughter. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, you were quite busy over the summer, I'm sure. Any questions or so for Xianji about her thesis topic? I actually do have one question about your first name. What do you mean by improvement in the outcome? What would that look like? What are you anticipating?
Basically just about if the main trial would get a positive
I see.
result. Yeah, statistically significant and maybe larger effect size.
I see. Okay, great. Thank you. Next, we have Morgan. If you'd like to present, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Morgan Mazars. I'm a second year EPI student in the clinical trials track. And for my research and progress, I'm going to start out with Pfizer internship. So I had this over the past summer, and my title was sourcing operations and contracting compliance, but essentially I worked with vendors or CROs for clinical trials. And one of my bigger projects was looking at like the different CROs and who was essentially the parent company of them. And Pfizer has contracts with these vendors and CROs, so they have to make sure that they're working with the correct company and making sure that, you know, a parent company is the correct name in the contract that they have with them. So I looked at a lot of that, and then I also worked on a due diligence project for vendor consultant. So basically, I reviewed that document and kind of finalized it. And then another big one was we had this thing called vendor marketplace. So essentially, we would put CROs and vendor events in, and I manually put those in. So that was another thing. And then I worked on the SOC team, so sourcing operations and contracting compliance. That's SOC for short. But basically, we had this team norms. So there's about 25 people on our team, and me and another intern, we created basically a slide for when people join meetings. They can look at basically what we're all about. If we're in meetings with other people from different departments, they know what we do. It's just something for people to look at and gain from when they join meetings and see what we're all about. And then another thing I did was with another intern, we consolidated and redesigned a slide deck that is used every semester. So this was a pretty big project as well. This was also looking at different CROs and the different, basically the different services that they provide. So we tried to auto-populate the information from Excel into PowerPoint. So that was a huge project. And then some other smaller things that I did, I redacted master service agreements, so basically contracts between CROs and Pfizer, and pretty much covered up like financial information, looked at the amendments and things that were changed along the process, things like that. And then lastly, identified some trends between consultants, vendors or CROs, and then principal investigators that were processed by my department that I worked for, and then also looking at trends over the past 20 years from departments that weren't involved, like that weren't with SOC. So I can't really like show any of the stuff that I worked on just because it's confidential within the company, but that's pretty much what I did. And then some of the takeaways that I've learned through all of my projects was flexibility and flexing to a teammate. A lot of my projects, I collaborated with other interns and a lot of other colleagues. So if I needed help or if someone else did, it was really important that we would flex to each other and help each other out because it makes the process go by a lot more smoothly. And then also active listening. We learned a lot about this. Sometimes no response is a better response than jumping in and, you know, saying a bunch of things that can get overwhelming. And sometimes you don't really need to say anything. So that was another thing that I took away. Also, there's 4 of their core values. One of them is joy. So we really focused a lot on the work and home life balance. I think this is important when it comes to school and work. Definitely need to, you know, keep things in mind. Don't get overwhelmed or put too much time into school or work or something else. You know, you have to have that balance and do things that make you happy. And then lastly, problem solving. There are some projects that definitely didn't go my way this summer, but that's not a bad thing. That's still, you came to a conclusion and realized, hey, this isn't going to work. You have to do something else. And that's okay too. You have to problem solve and kind of push through and rely on your teammates and colleagues for that. So that was my first experience. And then I also had another job this summer. So I worked for a clinical trial for chronic kidney disease patients. And basically it was called system interventions to achieve early and equitable transplants. So essentially I am a research interviewer. So I call potential patients who qualify for the study and I conduct baseline surveys with them. So basically, I get oral consent over the phone with them. I do that. And then I do a 40-minute baseline survey with them. And I also use the REDCap system, which I learned in the data management class actually last year. So that was really cool. I use it every day. So I'm very familiar with that now. And then I also process payments for them. So when they complete the survey, I also, put in their payment, they get a check. So that's another incentive for the trial. But basically, some takeaways from this is that you have to be persistent with people. Sometimes people think that I'm just like a random person calling, and I have to assure them that, hey, I'm calling from the Duke system. I have my own study phone and I use an app called Doximity. So it calls from their area code. So I'm not random, but it's sometimes really hard to tell people that I'm calling from, wherever the study site is. Also customer service, you need to be very understanding. These people are going through a lot. They have a chronic condition and you have to be understanding that they might not be, they might have like short temper, or maybe there's some people are really nice, but you never really know. And you have to be able to just hear them out and be very understanding. And then also verbal communication. I talk to people over the phone. So it's not over video, it's not in person. So I have to be very clear and have good verbal communication skills, and also reassure them that, what the study is about. It's things like that. And then lastly, have to be a quick thinker, especially over the phone. Sometimes people make assumptions about things and you have to come up with answers that don't violate HIPAA. You can't, agree with a patient, tell them you can't get too personal, things like that. So you have to think quickly. And also sometimes patients get off track during the survey as well. So you have to find a way to reel it back in. So yeah, those were the two experiences that I have had over the summer, and I'm still continuing this job right now through the STEP study. So thank you.
Sounds great. And the STEP study, that's through Duke, you were saying?
Yeah, it's through, Duke. There's Geisinger Health System, which is in Pennsylvania, University of Mississippi Medical Center, and then Northwell Health, that's who employs me. They're out of Staten Island. But yeah, those are the three sites basically.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Any questions for Morgan? I did have one question. Sorry, I'm the one with all the questions. In terms of the types of things that were contracted out at Pfizer, I'm just curious because I personally don't have an industry background. What types of tasks were they contracting out for their studies?
So I didn't look at specific contract. Well, I looked at some MSAs, but it was more of looking at, I had to redact them. So I was looking at the financial aspects of it. And then this isn't really answering your question, so I don't really know. But that's kind of my area. And then I also looked at, like I said before, the finding out who's the parent company, what's their real name, who are they doing business as, things like that. So I don't know too specific.
Yeah, but still, important experience that you probably wouldn't get normally.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Miles, you're up next.
Looks like there's a hand raised.
Sorry, who had a question? Anyone?
Yeah, sorry. First of all, thank you, Morgan, for sharing your experience. Just curious that when and how do you find those out of state internship or job research interviewer, you said? Yeah, thank you.
Oh, how to apply for that job? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, how and when do you have to prepare for that, or yeah?
Did I have to prepare for it?
Oh, when the time you prepare sending or finding the job.
Oh, I got you. Okay, so I applied for the clinical trial job that I'm currently working on actually last October, and it didn't start until April, just because they had a lot of issues with just getting started with the IRB and things like that. So that had a delayed start. I wasn't supposed to start that late. And then for Pfizer, I applied, I think that was in like January or February, so pretty early on. I know they're pretty competitive, these jobs, so if you can apply early, definitely do that. I think waiting is probably not the best choice because there's a lot of people who apply. So definitely earlier the better.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks. Miles, whenever you're ready.
Alrighty, 1 second. Can you all see that?
Yeah, now I can see it.
Okay, cool. Come on, there we go. Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. For everyone who doesn't know me, my name is Miles Jackson. I'm a second-year clinical trial student in the EP department. And I'll just give a little background of what I did this summer. So basically this summer, I interned at Merck, and it's another biopharmaceutical company similar to Pfizer. I was within their global clinical trial operations group. Every year they do this kind of like, partnership with a lot of like seniors in seniors in undergrad, as well as like postgrads who, want to get into the industry, and partner them with these kind of divisions within their operations groups and get them experience. So I was specifically within the MAP team, which is the Metrics, Analytics, and Performance team. Basically, this is kind of a technical kind of group that focuses a lot on data visualizations. And they're contracted out to a lot of like internal parts of the company, as well as other like outsourced like CROs or other places that run trials. And these visualizations focus on different aspects of trial design and trial tracking metrics as well. So one of the main parts that I focused on while I was with the MAP team was looking at 2 different apps that are in their development right now in the very early stages. They have stuff that focuses on like protocol development, protocol amendments, focusing on like enrollment data, retention data, looking at other things that just show a lot of the technical sides of trials and how to like manage them, but keeping it all in a very succinct like format. And basically it was really kind of like geared to different audiences and different users. That was one of the main things that I really took away from the team in general. They use these apps to really kind of delve and like focus on different end users and like focusing the product on them, basically, whether it be a CRA, CRM, people who are business minded, people who are actually at the sites running the trials. There are different modalities for each of the different visualizations that are being used. And I really can't, like I said, like Morgan said, I couldn't really show like any kind of visual examples because it's kind of with the company, but they were very detailed and showing like basically every site, all the details from patient level data, look at country level data, and throughout different protocol level data. So it was very like versatile with how they produce the different visualizations. So basically, like I said, I worked with 2 different apps, particularly this summer. The first app, that was my main project, was focusing on the enrollment and productivity app. That app mainly focused on looking at retention data as well as enrollment data for all the different trials that were in development and that were also being like run at Merck in the future and in planning stages. So it really focused on, looking at screen failure rates, looking at early termination rates, seeing some of the demographic information behind why that is happening at certain sites, looking at, how is recruitment happening in this country compared to another country, looking at certain granularities like that within the app. So I was tasked with looking to see, based off what they were already looking at within our team, understanding other external, sources or other literature sources, other industry standards that could be used to kind of like couple and improve the app in the best way possible. So I did a lot of like literature searches online through different like, studies, as well as looking, through other external sources, as well as also looking within the actual app itself. The team uses a ClickSense platform, which is very similar to like a Tableau. They had download and input all the data from the different trial sites into the system directly, and then they kind of manipulate the data as fit. And then from that, they make the different visualizations. So that's kind of how I was, exposed to that primarily and learned some of the, bare bones of the system, and then did my own unique visualizations from that, focusing on like screen failure and early termination. Along with that, I also focused on the diversity app, just another, kind of unique app and like a new app that they're developing now. That was something they had on their plate. In the last couple of years, they kind of like really want to emphasize diversity and trial enrollment. That's something that is really important to them now in the company. So they really are putting a lot of like resources and time into this app as well. So diversity went beyond just like race, ethnicity, looked at like ability, gender, other things that could be influential to the performance of a trial site. So they also included all that information for each trial as well. And that was seen at the international level for some aspects of it, but it was also compared to county level census data. So it really was only kind of constrained to the United States as of now. But with that, I also was able to kind of make my own unique visualizations in terms of like looking at how, you know, the benchmarking of the diversity profiles at a certain site compared to the county level data that's from census level information. So seeing how they are comparing to the regions around them and understanding where they can be, you know, mitigation strategies can be put in place to improve their attention to the diversity as well, depending on where the site is and what kind of protocol it is. So basically, with all this information that I was, you know, looking at from these different like teams, overall, I was working directly with people who were former CRMs, people who worked in SQL, which is the coding language of the ClickSense platform, and really understanding, you know, some of the backend work for developing a lot of the visualizations. That was something interesting for me. I also worked with people who had business mindsets, who came from like financial backgrounds. It was a very diverse team, along with people who have financial backgrounds, project managers, data analysts. So it was very, you know, unique, and everyone wasn't coming back with like a clinical trial like background, which honestly is why they kind of liked me, because I have this kind of background at Hopkins. They were like very intrigued by like, oh, like how are you doing it in school? Like da, da, da. It's very like specific to like trials. They weren't used to that because they have all these different backgrounds and still come into like the industry business model and like come to this like clinical trial like end goal basically. So the team was very diverse. I loved working with them because it gave me a lot of different perspectives of like how in industry you have all these different, you know, business backgrounds, but can still come together and like run trials effectively and either way. And along with that, another great part of my internship this summer was just networking in general. They really gave us an opportunity to look beyond just our own team and really kind of branch out to a lot of different sectors of the company. Some of the main, you know, important people I talked to in different aspects of trial design were trial optimization, particularly with diversity in clinical trials. Particularly along with that, they have two different epidemiology departments. One focused mostly on observational research, which you can see at the bottom, looking at like cost-effective modeling and real-world evidence for that. The other one looked more at prevalence data, like the real, like typical statistical epidemiology, prevalence tracking, stuff like that for different trial enrollment. So I was able to talk to people from both sides of that, so that was very interesting. Along with that, looking at case management, as well as like medical affairs and regulatory affairs of how, you know, drugs are implemented in, you know, clinical practice. And one thing that really stuck out to me was the PV group, or the pharmacovigilance group. They were very interesting to talk to, as well as risk management, because, you know, I could see myself doing that in the future as well. So these were all a lot of different people that I talked to in different fields within Merck. And everyone really loved the company. They have nothing but good things to say about it. And I really enjoyed hearing how they're all, you know, very happy about their jobs and feel like they're making a difference. And along with that, towards the end of my summer, through the program, they offer these like internal job postings for all the interns basically. So I was able to actually interview for one and get a position to go back to Merck next summer. So I will be returning in June as a clinical trial coordinator after I graduate. And basically, that's just a very versatile role for a lot of entry-level, you know, trial people who work with like the administrative side of tracking how the progression of trials goes, whether it be through adverse events or like reporting to stakeholders or all the training documents for different sites. So I'm actually very excited about that because, you know, that's a lot of the stuff we learn in the classroom, but getting the hands-on experience finally in some kind of like industry setting that will be really interesting. So yeah, that was my summer. And if you have any questions, I'm open to any of that. Thank you.
Congrats on the job offer, by the way.
Thank you.
Any questions for Miles?
Just a comment though, Miles, maybe you can speak a little bit on how you prepared for, you know, searching around for internships, because we spent, you know, several months kind of talking through different ideas, and there are a lot of different websites. So maybe you can just give some short insight on, you know, sort of how you chose these particular internships to apply for.
Yeah, so I actually had a couple options they have the DEI collective that's through Hopkins that I also applied to a couple internships through. This was all back in like Morgan said, very early on. I applied, I think around this time last year, like September, October, November-ish. So I actually had this Merck internship like solidified and lined up in November. So it took me a while to really kind of parse through the different options, but I mean, I kind of did my own independent research beyond just like what was provided through the institutions, because like, you know, I'd like to have my own personal options, but it was nice just to at least have that diversity of like, you know, they're out there. It's just a matter of just searching for it and really like looking for what you think is best for you and really doing the own research that you want to, you know, like look for.
Thank you. All right, Jasmine, if you'd like to present, please.
Sure, I'll share my screen. Are you guys able to see it?
Yes, thanks.
Oh, yes. So my name is Jasmine, and a little bit background about myself. I'm a second-year master's student in the EPI department and in the clinical trials track, like everyone else here. And then I'm also pursuing a pharmaco-epi and drug safety certificate. So I graduated from UC San Diego in 2021 with a Bachelor of Science in Public Health and a minor in economics. So during undergrad, I was doing some wet lab research and also got exposed to clinical trial research in my senior year, which was with liver disease. But the main turning point was when I was being TA for my undergrad EPI course. This is what got me into EPI. And then I was also president for the undergrad public health organization. So I was very involved with the public health department and the new school that was built in our undergrad college and other fellow public health majors as well. And next I can share some of my current work, which is also what I did over the summer. Unlike Morgan and Miles, I did not do industry. I mainly focused on academic trials. So I am an RA at the Center for Clinical Trials. And I assist with ongoing ophthalmology trials such as Advice and Merit here at the center, like most of the faculty here does too. And then sometimes I help with the lung health cohort with Dr. Sugar here. And then because they're ongoing trials, I mainly help with data entry as data comes in, and also audit the data entered by each of the clinical sites, checking for discrepancies, stuff like that. And then sometimes I also help with analyzing symptoms data and using SAS as well. And then I do have another position at the Wilmer Eye Institute where I am helping with the new phase 3 ophthalmology trial called the NAC Attack. This trial is another stage from the previous ones that I did. So I'm very grateful to be exposed to different stages of the clinical trials. So I'm part of the coordinating center where we're currently planning a lot of logistic details and setting up the study. So some of my tasks are to manage IRB procedures, helping sites on board, communicating with their local IRB contacts. I also help with forms design, such as like designing form logic, what questions do we ask, how to format the pages, which I also learned that in the data management class by Dr. Shade here, and then also help building the RedCat system as well. And then some of the other tasks involve still a lot of communication with different sites because it's still in the planning stage. So with different sites, especially with the international ones, that we have to comply with their laws, shipping out and inside the country, and also with different vendors as well for handling blood, plasma, drug dispensing, and also our sponsor, the NEI as well. And I also did TA for the clinical trial course over the summer for Dr. Shade and Dr. Sugar as well. And other than that, I also worked on my thesis over the summer. So just a little bit information about my thesis. My topic is the 2-year cataract incidence and its associated risk factors using this prospective data from the study ProcStar, a population with Stargardt disease. And the risk factors that I'm currently looking at are age, gender, race, vitamin A, supplementation, smoking, best corrected visual acuity, refractive error, autofluorescence, area, flex within and outside the arcades. I also look at baseline prevalence and their incidence in this specific population. And by far, I found out around 6% of them develop cataract over a 2-year follow-up period. Additionally, I'm also looking at refractive error change among this population, but haven't found much that's clinical meaningful yet. But this is my RP for now. I might talk some more about it in the next RIP meetings. So this is what I've been working over the summer, and great to meet everyone here again.
Thank you, Jasmine. Any questions for her? What's been the biggest challenge for dealing with the IRB things that you've been working on? I know everyone has their own personal preferences.
It's very complicated. It's new. That's why because the PI I'm working with, it's her first clinical trial as well. So we're all learning together, but it's been a process.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you. Nicole, I believe you're next.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks.
See you all again. Okay. Okay, so here's what I worked on over my summer. There's some domestic as well as international research. The thing that's shaping up to probably be my thesis is a retrospective analysis of the IRIS registry, which contains clinical data on over 70 million patients across 400 million visits. And this data set is longitudinal, so you can track patients over time, and it has information on their demographics, visual acuity, diagnosis codes, procedural codes, as well as medication usage. The disease that I'm studying is called herpes zoster ophthalmicus, which is a viral infection of the eye, and it can cause all sorts of eye problems, including scarring, as well as occurrence of glaucoma, which can cause optic nerve damage, both of which can lead to vision loss and in some cases require surgery. And so the likely thesis, and I've just begun exploratory analysis of this data set, is a paired comparison of eyes with versus without HZO within the same patient. We have data on 50,000 eyes, and we'll just observe them forward over time. The three aims I'm thinking of are longitudinal modeling of visual acuity outcomes, incidence and outcomes of cataract surgery, because there's some concern that these patients, the eyes with HZO might get cataract earlier. And the question is, how good are the outcomes for cataract surgery in an eye that has got a viral infection versus an eye that doesn't? And then also the incidence of glaucoma surgery, because we know that this virus infection can cause elevation of pressure, and also the treatment for the virus infection is often a steroid, which itself can cause elevation of eye pressure and lead to glaucoma. And so we want to see what is the risk of needing glaucoma surgery in this cohort that's followed over time. So that's kind of what's shaping up as likely my master's thesis. And I did make some progress as well on my core K23 research, which is funded by the National Eye Institute. This is a prospective cohort study of patients with corneal infections that I see myself in clinic. And so we're collecting a rich amount of clinical data. We're performing multimodal imaging, which consists of slit lamp photography, OCT scans, and something called Scheimpflug densitometry, which lets us measure how dense a scar in the clear cornea is. Along with that, I do want to supplement that longitudinal data set with additional information. And so we've decided to perform whole genome sequencing of isolates, mostly bacteria that grow from cultures, which are often performed for these infections. And that will hopefully provide a lot of rich information on what strain of bacteria is causing the infection, antibiotic resistance genes, and virulence and persistence factors. And then more preliminarily, there's a lot of work to be done on this, but we want to see if it's possible to measure the inflammatory response and whether that differs in different types of infection. And so hopefully this can result in a fairly rich longitudinal data set, and you can do statistical modeling to figure out which of these covariates is most predictive of visual outcomes. Here's just a picture of some of the imaging we're doing. This is a photograph of an infection. This is a densitometry scan showing scar density. And then I have been working for a while now, but I'm making progress on securing a top-of-the-line OCT machine that can allow me to capture reliable images of the entire corneal anatomy. And that I think will be a big help to try to comprehensively get a sense of the anatomic damage that's caused by this disease. Here are the aims based on imaging alone. And again, we hope to combine this with genomic data, which will further enhance the richness of the data set. But we want to see which of these modalities has the greatest precision, but also reproducibility for measuring thinning, which can happen from infection causing damage. I do want to do a longitudinal analysis of scar density using this densitometry function, because there's some evidence that these scars may change over time differentially based on what type of bug is causing the infection, but also what type of treatment the patient is getting. And so we can hopefully model that out over time. And then finally, we want to have a sort of comprehensive predictive model for which of these structural biomarkers might predict visual outcomes, because the whole point of any future research would be to improve visual outcomes. So right now, we don't have very good biomarkers, so we use crude estimates like visual acuity when we think we can produce more disease-specific measurements for infection severity. And then the other thing, the big thing that I did over the summer was I spent 2 weeks in India at the Arvind Eye Care System, setting up a telemedicine diagnostic validation study. The background on this would be that anterior segment diseases, or diseases affecting the front of the eye, like cataract, refractive error, and corneal infections and scarring, they are a major public health problem, and they're really the biggest cause of blindness within eye diseases. And 90% of these occur in rural or remote settings in low and middle income countries. And the COVID pandemic highlighted that we need decentralized models of care for diagnosing and also following up these kinds of diseases, instead of expecting patients to drive several hours or miss a day of work to come into an urban center, which is far away from the rural location where they live. And so for the past 2 years, we've been working with our partner, the Arvind Eye Care System, which is a high volume eye system in India, and also we've been collaborating very closely with biomedical engineering and AI experts at Hopkins to develop a platform that enables very easy photography of the anterior segment. I'll show you some pictures momentarily, but the whole idea is that you want to make this very easy to do, very reliable, and you also want it to be not only de-skilled, but also decentralized. And so that's the platform we've been working to create. The model that we've organically come up with after numerous consultations with our partners in India is that a community health worker can screen patients at the point of care in their communities instead of a centralized location. They'll measure visual acuity, take a very focused eye history, and then capture images via this app, which I'll show you pictures of. And then this information is transferred via the cloud for review by an ophthalmologist who can review the clinical data and the imaging and make a referral and also a diagnosis decision. Basically seeing if the patient needs to come into the hospital and take a day off from work and have their caretaker take a day off from work, whether that's really necessary or not. And then there's also integration with WhatsApp, which is widely used in India to the point where the patient and their family member can also receive the ophthalmologist decision. And then there can be logistical arrangement of transportation for patient who comes in for facility. And there's also use cases for emergency triage in the field, as well as managing post-surgical follow-up. Here's a quite old picture actually of the platform, but basically you can see that a community health worker can very reliably take pictures of the eye at the point of care. And so when I was there, I spent 2 weeks trying to make sure that the training regimen for our community health workers was doing well. We had a very sort of rigorous curriculum for local community health workers who are drawn from paraprofessional health training programs in the rural villages. And so these workers are taught to collect the following information: again, demographics, Snellen visual acuity, pinhole visual acuity, which tells information about whether the patient needs glasses, eye history, and smartphone photography. Here are some images of the eye that were taken by our volunteers. These are actually not just the best images, but these are pretty representative of the kind of images we're able to get with a well-trained community health worker. They are remarkably better than they were 2 years ago when we started the project. And they do enable diagnosis, fairly reliable diagnosis, I think, of cataract, corneal scarring, and emergency trauma cases. And so now, and we've graded them as being highly diagnosable. And so now we're doing a 1,000 patient or 2,000 eye diagnostic validation study. I was there during the pilot sort of ramp up phase where we're training the community health workers and kind of working through kinks in the data analysis infrastructure, data collection infrastructure. But now here's the head-to-head comparison. First, a community health worker will do that exam that I've talked about and upload the data. A remote ophthalmologist will review this information, make a decision. And then all the patients get standard of care, which is an eye camp examination where they all get a technician to measure their visual acuity, and they get a live ophthalmologist exam. So there's no compromises in patient care going on. We're just doing a comparison. And so we're recruiting about 100 patients every week or so, 75 to 100 every week or so. And so we want to compare visual acuity measurements, but also diagnoses of common anterior segment conditions. And so this is ongoing. So I've been fairly busy over the summer, not only setting the study up, but also reviewing the images, making sure that the data quality is good, data completion is good, and also making sure that the images are high quality. And so that's taken up a lot of my time over the summer. That's all I have.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions? I'm curious for your international work, are the community health workers serving as stakeholders as well in terms of the research trajectory? Yeah.
Yes. I should mention there was a lot of stakeholder analysis that was performed about a year and a half ago, right when India was at the peak of their Delta wave. And that did involve local community stakeholders.
And do you know if there are opportunities for any further analyses or program evaluation, any potential opportunities in the future? It sounds all exciting. I'm really excited.
So what do you mean by program evaluation?
Yeah, or there plans for program evaluation, but also are there opportunities for others to use some of the data or data?
I would love that. I could always use help. So certainly, right now our top focus is really getting just a good data set together. We are collecting, again, 75 to 100 images a week. I mean, I just got a big image dump last night, so I have to go through them and make sure they're good and grade them and so forth. But we really could use help with several sub-analyses. We want to track volunteer image quality over time. Maybe we can do some longitudinal modeling to see whether the quality improves over time following the training when they're sort of let loose to work on their own. Hopefully it improves and doesn't decline, but we don't know. We do want to, toward the end of the study, we're also going to do a second stakeholder analysis where we evaluate, again, feasibility and acceptability after people have been using the platform for a while. I think the end game really would be a community randomized trial, but that's some ways away because we have to demonstrate that the platform is fit for use, obviously, first.
Very good. Well, just let us know if there are opportunities to work with you.
I would love that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 more students left. Kamini, if you're back, I know you have to step away for a minute, but if you are, you can present, that'd be great.
Yes, sorry. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah, thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kamini. I've done my Doctor of Pharmacy from India, and then I worked as a clinical research coordinator for COVID-19 clinical trials. And I mainly worked for some of the pharmaceutical industries and also for the WHO Solidarity trial. And that's how I got interested in this track. I'm like Jasmine, I'm also pursuing the pharmacoepi and drug safety certificate here. So many of my peers have worked on clinical trials over the summer, but I decided to go parallel and do some other work in other areas. So I worked on a pair study, which is basically preventing and assessing intimate partner homicide risk. It's a case control study, and they assess risk over 5 different states in the US, which is New Jersey, New Jersey, Maryland, Texas, Arizona, Michigan. I guess it's 6. It's also Oregon. And this work is mainly done by Dr. Jacqueline Campbell from the School of Nursing in collaboration with the ASU, which is Arizona State University. So we try to identify the risk factors for the intimate partner homicide, and also creating a risk factor assessment tool, which will help prevent future homicide cases. We work in collaboration with the police department and some of the DA offices as well. My role in this work is mainly to abstract the data from the police reports and newspaper reports and give it to the team. I also provide some assistance in data coding for them, and there's some interesting analysis which goes on because this is a case control study. They are doing with using a propensity method. So I'm also working on that for the time being. And it was just interesting, and it was my way of bringing the core concepts learned in epidemiology into actual practice. And after that, I also, so this is one of the flyer that I designed for this pair study, which was used to display out in various conferences. And other than that, I also worked on a guaranteed income and health study, which was basically done, which is conducted by Dr. Lauren Dean and so severely they are a student, a PhD student at epidemiology, and he works with Dr. Dean. And the main target of this study is to estimate the effect of giving health cash assistance to those who fall under low income. And the Baltimore Young Family Success Fund is basically planning to give out $1,000 a month for 200 randomly selected individuals living in Baltimore City. And we as a team would help evaluate the impact of this intervention on public health. And as of now, I'm working on a scoping review and screening articles for scoping reviews, mainly conducting on international studies which have looked at these interventions. And I also plan to help the team further with analysis in future. Apart from this, I just spent some time working on my thesis. And for my thesis, Dr. Irwin and I, we are working on a systematic review for methods or interventions of obtaining informed consent in low and middle income countries. And I just highlighted this as colors at the stage that I am. So I've completed the protocol preparation and the IRB submission as of now. And right now I'm working with an informationist from the Welsh Library to design a search database. And I plan to have all those in green soon. So we'll eventually get there. And the outcomes of this study are to understand is to see how patient understanding is depending on which intervention, and which intervention helps best to improve patient understanding of the informed consent, and also satisfaction as well as accuracy.
Great, thank you. In the interest of time, since we do have a lot of folks leaving, let's switch over to Ling. If anyone has questions for Kamini, please feel free to put it in the chat. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ling, you can go whenever you're ready. Oh, did we lose her? I think we lost her. So, okay, well, thanks everyone for coming. Feel free to reach out and connect with others who may have presented that you might be interested in learning more about. And we will see you next month for our next RIP.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great session.